The stars twinkled brightly in the distant galaxy, where the mighty Targovans ruled over many civilizations. They were known for their great power and advanced technology, and they believed no one could stand against them. For years, they had dominated weaker species with their strength and their vast fleets, taking what they wanted without hesitation. But something had changed. Humanity, once a young and small species on a planet called Earth, had entered the galactic scene. At first, the Targovans did not take them seriously. Humans were new to space, and their technology was not as advanced as the Targovans. They assumed that Earth would be easy to conquer, just like so many other planets before it. The Targovans had sent their message to Earth, demanding that humanity surrender its resources. The message was clear: bow to us or face destruction. The Targovans believed that humans would cower and submit, as many had before, but they did not expect what happened next. In the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, a meeting was being held. The room was filled with representatives from different worlds, each one with its own story, its own culture, and its own fears. The Targovans had already made their threats known, and now it was humanity's turn to respond. At the center of the room stood Elena Marquez, a young human diplomat. She was not as tall as some of the other representatives, nor did she have the strength of the warriors from other species. But what she had was something more powerful: the courage to speak for her people. The room grew silent as Elena stepped forward. Her voice was steady, clear, and filled with purpose. "The Targovans believe we are weak," she said, her words echoing through the hall. "They believe we will bow to them, but they are wrong." The eyes of the council members turned toward her. Elena's words were bold, and they stirred something in the hearts of many in the room. The other species had long watched as the Targovans bullied those weaker than themselves. The Targovans were known for their arrogance, and they had always assumed that power alone could win any war. "We are humans," Elena continued. "We are a species that does not know how to give up. You want war. You'll get it. But understand this: we will not back down. We will fight for our freedom, and we will show you what we are capable of. The Targovans will learn that humanity is not to be underestimated." The room was quiet for a moment. The other representatives exchanged glances, unsure of how to react. Some were surprised by the strength of Elena's words, while others felt uneasy. The Targovans had never faced such defiance before. The Targovan ambassador, a tall, imposing figure named Varnak, stood up. His face was cold, his eyes filled with contempt. He looked at Elena and spoke in a voice that was both mocking and threatening. "You speak bravely, human," he said, "but words will not save you. You have no idea what you are up against." Elena did not flinch. "Maybe we don't know everything," she replied, "but we know one thing for sure. We will never let anyone take what is ours. Not the Targovans, not anyone." The Targovan ambassador sneered and turned to leave. "This is not over," he said, his voice low. "You will regret this, humans. Mark my words." As Varnak and his delegation left the room, Elena turned to the other representatives. "We don't need to be afraid," she said. "We have the strength of our will, and we have each other. Together, we can stand up to the Targovans." Her words sparked something in the hearts of those who had listened. The idea of standing up to the mighty Targovans, of fighting for freedom and peace, was a powerful one. The representatives from other planets looked at each other, nodding in agreement. They had seen the bravery in Elena's eyes, and they knew that humanity had just shown them something they had never expected: the strength of the human spirit. As the meeting ended, Elena stood tall, her mind focused on the future. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, and there would be many challenges to face. But in that moment, she felt a spark of hope. Humanity would not be bullied. They would rise up, and they would fight for what was right. The Targovans had made a mistake. They had underestimated humanity, and soon they would see just how wrong they were. The Targovans were gone, but the weight of their threat still hung in the air. On Earth, The news spread like wildfire. Elena Marquez's words had sparked a flame in the hearts of many, but now it was time to turn that flame into something more. The Targovans had made their move, and humanity had no choice but to prepare for war. Elena and General Nathan Hale, a seasoned military leader known for his calm under pressure, met in a secure room within the United Nations headquarters. The walls were lined with maps of the galaxy, and the air was thick with the sound of voices speaking in hushed tones. Elena stood by a large table, looking over the strategies that had been laid out. "We can't fight this alone," General Hale said, his voice steady but filled with concern. "The Targovans have a fleet the size of which we've never seen. If we try to stand against them by ourselves, we will be destroyed." Elena nodded, her mind already working on the next step. She had known this from the start. Humans were resilient, but they couldn't take on the Targovans without help. The plan was clear. They needed to rally the galaxy's other civilizations, those who had suffered under the Targovans' cruel reign. "Then we make allies," Elena said, determination in her eyes. "We'll reach out to those who have been oppressed, the species who want to stand up but are too afraid. We'll show them that together, we have a chance." General Hale looked at her thoughtfully. "You're right," he said, "but there are risks. Some of these species may not trust us. They've been afraid of the Targovans for too long." Elena's gaze hardened. "That's exactly why we need to try. They may be afraid, but we can give them hope. We're not just asking them to fight. We're offering them the chance to be free." In the days that followed, Elena and General Hale worked tirelessly to contact the leaders of various planets. Messages were sent to the Trilaxians, a species known for their advanced scientific knowledge, but who had been subjugated by the Targovans for generations. Their technology was unmatched, and their wisdom would be crucial in the coming battle. But the Trilaxians were hesitant. They had seen countless rebellions crushed by the Targovans, and feared that they would only be destroyed if they joined the fight. Elena's team also reached out to the Zorvans, a warrior species known for their fierce fighting spirit, but who had been enslaved by the Targovans in recent years. The Zorvans had a deep respect for strength and honor, but their wounds were still fresh, and they were reluctant to trust anyone, even humans. As the days passed, Elena met with the leaders of these species, each one filled with doubt, but also a spark of hope. Slowly, her words began to resonate with them. "The Targovans will not stop," she told them. "They will come for you too. We have a choice: stand together and fight, or let them destroy us all. We can't afford to wait any longer." It wasn't easy, and there were many moments of uncertainty. But with every conversation, more species began to join the cause. The Trilaxians agreed to share their technological advancements, designing new weapons and defense systems. The Zorvans, though wary, pledged their warriors to the alliance. One by one, more planets committed to the cause, and the hope that had once felt distant now began to take shape. But there was one more piece of the puzzle to solve: the Aegis Shield. Earth's scientists had been working on this secret project for months, and it was humanity's last hope. The Aegis Shield was designed to protect against the Targovans' most powerful weapon, their energy-based blasts that could obliterate entire fleets in seconds. The shield would be humanity's key to surviving the coming conflict. Dr. Aditi Rao, a brilliant scientist and the project leader, stood in her lab, examining the Aegis Shield's latest design. She looked over the calculations, her brow furrowed with concentration. "This could work," she muttered to herself, "but we'll need more time." But time was something they didn't have. The Targovans were coming, and they needed the shield now. "We'll have to speed up production," Dr. Rao said, turning to her team. "If we can't finish it in time, the alliance will fall apart before it even begins." Elena and General Hale were well aware of the pressure. Every day, they received reports from the various worlds they had contacted, and each message contained a mixture of hope and fear. But one thing was clear: humanity had united, and together with their new allies, they were ready to face the Targovans. "The war is coming," Elena said to General Hale, as they watched the progress unfold. But we're not going to face it alone. As the final preparations were made, Elena stood on the balcony of the United Nations headquarters, looking out at the stars. The Targovans may have underestimated humanity, but they would soon learn the cost of their mistake. The fight for freedom was about to begin, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy what they were made of. The day of the Targovan assault had arrived. Earth's outer colonies, the first line of defense, were scattered across the vast reaches of space. They were far from home, small and unprepared, but they had something no enemy could easily crush: human spirit. The Targovans had underestimated humanity. They believed that their vast fleet would sweep across the colonies in a matter of hours, wiping out any resistance. But what the Targovans didn't know was that humanity had already begun to fight back in unexpected ways. At the heart of the Targovan assault was a massive fleet, capable of launching deadly energy blasts from long distances. The first wave came without warning, and the colonies scrambled to defend themselves. Communication lines buzzed with urgency as stations across the colonies began to call for help. On one of these stations, a young commander named Sarah Daniels stood at the helm. She had trained for years to defend her people, but never in her life had she faced an enemy like this. The Targovans' fleet filled the skies, their ships dark and imposing. Their weapons glowed with power, ready to strike. "Commander Daniels, the Targovan fleet is closing in," her officer called out, his voice full of panic. Sarah's heart raced, but she kept her calm. "Prepare the fighters and activate the defenses," she ordered, her voice steady. She wasn't about to let fear take over. Humanity's strength had always been in its ability to adapt, and today she would prove it. The first shots were fired, and explosions lit up the dark expanse of space. The Targovans unleashed their full might, their energy weapons tearing through the colony's outer defenses. The shields flared brightly, but they weren't strong enough to withstand the barrage for long. But Sarah wasn't about to give up. "Activate the new defense grid," she shouted. The Aegis shield, still in its early stages, had been deployed as a last-ditch effort. The human scientists had worked tirelessly to develop it, but it wasn't perfect. It was meant to be used on a larger scale, but desperate times called for desperate measures. To everyone's surprise, the shield worked. The first wave of Targovan blasts hit the shield, and for a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, the Targovan weapons began to flicker and short-circuit. The energy pulses that had been so devastating to other planets were now useless. The shield absorbed the energy, neutralizing the threat. "Commander, it's working," one of her officers cried out, his voice filled with disbelief. Sarah smiled, a sense of relief flooding through her. They weren't out of danger yet, but they had a chance. "Keep the shield up and return fire," she ordered. The human fighters, small and agile compared to the Targovan warships, took full advantage of the momentary weakness in the Targovan fleet. They attacked with precision, targeting the vulnerable spots on the Targovan ships. It wasn't enough to destroy them, but it was enough to force the Targovans into retreat. For the first time, the Targovans were losing. Their fleet began to pull back, retreating into the darkness of space. The humans had fought back, not with sheer force, but with ingenuity, teamwork, and courage. The Targovan fleet leader, Varnak, watched from his command ship as his forces fell back. He was furious. He had not expected this. Humans, weak and unprepared, had somehow managed to turn the tide. He had underestimated them, and now they had made him pay. "This is not over," he growled. "We will return, and next time, we will not be so merciful." But the humans had already begun celebrating their victory. On Sarah's station, the crew erupted in cheers. The Aegis shield had held, and the Targovans had been forced to retreat. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. Back on Earth, Elena Marquez watched the reports coming in. The first skirmish had been won, and humanity had proven something important. They could fight back. The Targovans might have more power, but humans had something they didn't: resourcefulness and heart. General Hale stood beside her, a quiet pride in his eyes. "This is just the beginning," he said. Elena nodded. "Yes, but it's a good start. If we can hold this line, we can push them back. And if we can do that, we can win this war." The news of the victory spread quickly through the alliance. The Trilaxians, the Zorvans, and the other species that had joined humanity's cause were all encouraged by the news. The Targovans had expected an easy war, but humanity had shown them that they were not a species to be underestimated. For the first time in the war, the Targovans were on the defensive. The battle had just begun, but humanity's message was clear. They were ready to fight for their freedom, and they would not stop until they had won. The victory at the outer colonies was a turning point, but it was only a small part of the larger war that lay ahead. Humanity's first battle had been won, but the Targovans would not give up so easily. In their retreat, they had learned something crucial. Humanity was not as weak as they had thought. Back on Earth, the situation was both hopeful and urgent. The Aegis Shield, the human-made defense system that had turned the tide, was still in its early stages. It had worked against the Targovan weapons, but it wasn't perfect. The shield had absorbed the blasts, but it hadn't been able to repair itself quickly enough to withstand repeated attacks. If the Targovans figured out how to break through, humanity would be in trouble. In a secret laboratory hidden deep beneath the surface of Earth, Dr. Aditi Rao and her team of scientists were working around the clock. They had made incredible progress, but there was still much to do. The Aegis Shield had to be improved, strengthened, and made more efficient. Time was running out, and the Targovans were sure to strike again. Dr. Rao stood in front of a large holographic display, analyzing the shield's data. Her eyes were tired, but her mind was sharp. The calculations were complex, but they had to get it right. The fate of humanity rested on their success. "I think I've found a way to improve the shield's power regeneration," Dr. Rao said, her voice filled with excitement. "If we can increase the energy flow to the core, the shield will be able to recharge faster, making it more resilient against repeated blasts." Her team gathered around, leaning in to examine the data. The new design was promising, but there were still risks. Increasing the energy flow could make the shield more powerful, but it could also make it unstable. "This is risky," one of the scientists said. "If we push the energy flow too far, the shield could malfunction. It might not just fail, it could cause a catastrophic explosion." Dr. Rao nodded, understanding the danger, but she also knew that they didn't have the luxury of time. The Targovans would not wait. "We don't have a choice," she said firmly. "If we don't make this work, we won't have a defense when they come back." The team worked long hours, fine-tuning the design and running simulations. They adjusted the energy conduits, optimized the core's power distribution, and tested every possible scenario. Finally, after days of intense work, they had a new version of the Aegis Shield, stronger, faster, and more stable. As the scientists prepared to test the new shield, Dr. Rao couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. If it worked, humanity would have a real chance against the Targovans. Meanwhile, Elena Marquez was busy coordinating the next steps with General Hale. The victory at the outer colonies had brought the alliance together, but there was still much to do. They needed to prepare for the Targovans' next move and strengthen their defenses across the galaxy. Elena sat in her office, looking over the reports that were pouring in from the other species in the alliance. The Trilaxians were continuing to develop new technologies, while the Zorvans had begun training their warriors in specialized tactics. But despite all the progress, Elena knew that the real key to victory lay in humanity's ability to adapt and innovate. She stood up and walked over to the window, staring out at the stars. The Targovans had made a dangerous mistake by underestimating humanity, but that didn't mean they would simply give up. The war was far from over. "General Hale," Elena said, turning to him, "we need to prepare for a counterattack. We can't wait for the Targovans to strike again. We need to take the fight to them. Hale nodded. I agree. But we'll need the Aegis shield fully operational before we make our move. Without it, we won't stand a chance. Alina's eyes narrowed with determination. Then we make sure it's ready. No more waiting. It's time for us to show the galaxy what humanity is capable of. Back in the laboratory, the final test was about to begin. Dr. Rayo and her team held their breath as the new Aegis shield powered up. The energy readings were high, but stable. The shield shimmered into existence, its protective barrier glowing brighter than ever before. Dr. Rayo exhaled a sigh of relief. It's working, she whispered. The shield held strong, its energy pulsing with a steady rhythm. The Targovans might have superior weapons, but humanity now had a weapon of their own, a defense that could turn the tide of the war. With the new Aegis shield in place, the balance of power had shifted. The Targovans had made a mistake when they underestimated humanity's will to fight, and now humanity was ready to show them the true meaning of resistance. The moment had arrived. The humans and their allies had gathered their strength, and the Aegis shield was ready. Now, it was time to go on the offensive. Alina Marquez stood in the command center of Earth's military operations, surrounded by maps, data, and screens displaying information from across the galaxy. The alliance of species, once divided by fear, was now united in purpose. The Trilaxians had shared their technological advancements, and the Zorvans had prepared their best warriors. Together, they were ready to strike back against the Targovans. Alina's mind raced as she reviewed the plans. The Targovans had a large fleet, but their commanders were overconfident after their previous victories. They had underestimated humanity's resolve, and now they would pay the price. The plan was simple: strike at a key Targovan stronghold and force them to retreat once and for all. General Hale, Alina said, turning to her trusted ally, it's time. We have the shield, we have the fighters, and we have the will. Let's show the Targovans what happens when they mess with humanity. General Hale nodded, his face stern but determined. We're ready, Alina. This will be the turning point. We'll hit them hard and fast, and they won't know what hit them. The human fleet, bolstered by their allies, prepared for the assault. Fighters zoomed into position, and the large ships took their places, ready to engage. The Targovans had no idea what was coming. As the fleet left Earth's atmosphere and headed toward the Targovan stronghold, tension filled the air. The crew on each ship was focused, ready for the battle ahead. Everyone knew that this mission could change the course of the war. Back on Earth, Dr. Aditi Rao and her team continued to monitor the Aegis shield's performance. The improvements they had made had worked. Thanks to the faster energy flow, the shield could now withstand multiple attacks. It was no longer a fragile defense. It was a force that could hold off the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. We've done it, Dr. Rao said, a smile creeping onto her face as she saw the results. The Aegis shield is ready to protect the fleet. We've given them the best chance to win. Meanwhile, the Targovans were already preparing for their next move. Varnak, the Targovan fleet leader, paced in his command center, watching as his fleet readied itself for battle. He had not been expecting a counterattack, but he would not make the same mistake twice. His forces were numerous, and he believed their weapons would crush the humans and their allies. But as the humans advanced, Varnak began to feel uneasy. Something was different this time. They're coming, one of his officers reported. The humans and their allies are approaching. Their fleet is large, larger than we expected. Varnak's eyes narrowed. Prepare for battle, he ordered. We'll crush them, but this time, we won't underestimate them. As the two fleets drew closer, the tension was palpable. The humans, guided by their new strength and the unity of their allies, were ready. The Targovans, confident in their power, prepared to defend their stronghold at all costs. The battle began with a roar. The human fighters launched forward, their smaller, faster ships darting through the battlefield. The Targovans fired their energy blasts, But the Aegis shield held strong, absorbing the blasts without faltering. The humans had come prepared. Alina watched from the command center, her heart racing as she watched the chaos unfold. Her voice was steady as she gave orders to her fleet. Focus on their command ships. We need to take down their leadership. The human fighters zoomed past Targovan warships, targeting the weak points in their armor. The Trilaxian technology had made their weapons more effective, and the Zorvans fought with fierce precision. The Targovans were being pushed back, unable to keep up with the coordinated attack. But the battle was not without its challenges. The Targovans were relentless, and their fleet fought back with every ounce of strength they had. The Aegis shield held, but it was not invincible. Each blast took its toll, and the shield's power began to fluctuate. Dr. Rowe's voice crackled through the communication system. We're losing energy. We need to stabilize the shield, or it will fail. Alina gripped the arm of her chair. We can't afford to lose it now. Keep the shield up, no matter what. The humans and their allies pushed forward, determined to break the Targovan hold on the stronghold. The Targovans were slowly beginning to retreat, their ships losing power as their command ships were targeted. But the Targovan fleet leader, Varnak, refused to surrender. This isn't over, Varnak growled, his eyes blazing with fury. We'll fight to the last ship. But it was clear to all who watched that the Targovans were losing ground. The human fleet had proven that they could stand against the might of the Targovans, and with each passing moment, the Targovans' power weakened. Alina's voice rang out across the comms. Keep pushing. We're almost there. The final blow came when the human fleet successfully destroyed the Targovan flagship. The blast sent shockwaves through the Targovan fleet, and for the first time, the Targovans retreated in disarray. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. The humans and their allies had struck the first serious blow to the Targovans, and the galaxy had witnessed a new kind of power, a power born of unity, determination, and courage. The victory at the Targovan stronghold had shaken the enemy, but it had not broken them. The humans and their allies had struck a heavy blow, but they knew that the Targovans were far from defeated. It was only a matter of time before they would come back with a vengeance. Back on Earth, Alina Marquez and General Hale gathered with their most trusted officers. The mood in the command room was a mix of relief and concern. They had won a significant battle, but the war was far from over. The Targovans had a vast fleet, and their leaders would be looking for ways to regain control. We've taken the first step, Alina said, her voice steady but serious. But we cannot rest. The Targovans will regroup. They won't let this defeat go unanswered. General Hale nodded. They'll strike back, that's for sure. But we have something they don't, the Aegis shield. It worked in our favor before, and it will again. Alina's eyes narrowed as she looked at the display screens showing the status of their forces. The Aegis shield had proven itself during the first strike, but it had also shown weaknesses. If the Targovans figured out how to bypass it, humanity's advantage would disappear. Dr. Rao and her team are still working on improvements to the shield, Alina said. We need to make sure it's stronger than ever. We can't afford to make any mistakes now. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, the Targovans were already making plans of their own. Varnak, the Targovan fleet leader, sat in the command center of his flagship, glaring at the damage reports. His fleet had suffered heavy losses, but it was not the end. He had learned from his mistake, and now he would make sure the humans paid for their arrogance. Prepare the fleet for retaliation, Varnak ordered, his voice cold and commanding. We will make them regret their victory. This time, we will not underestimate them. His officers quickly set to work, organizing a counteroffensive. The Targovans had technology and firepower far beyond what the humans could match, but they had underestimated humanity's resolve. Varnak would not make the same mistake again. This time, they would attack in full force, overwhelming the humans with sheer numbers. Back on Earth, Alina knew that the Targovans would not wait long to retaliate. They had seen how vulnerable the Aegis shield could be when stretched too thin. The next attack could be their final chance to stop the Targovans from gaining back control. "Prepare the fleet for another strike," Alina said, her voice calm but determined. "This time, we hit them before they can regroup. We can't let them take the initiative again." General Hale agreed. "We'll strike fast and hard before they can reorganize. We need to keep the pressure on them. The Targovans have powerful weapons, but they won't expect our speed." The human fleet began to mobilize, and the Allied forces joined them in their mission. It was a dangerous gamble, but it was the only option they had. The Targovans were coming, and they needed to strike first. As the fleets prepared to leave, Dr. Rowe's voice came over the comms. "The improvements to the Aegis shield are almost complete. We've increased its recharge speed and reinforced its core. It should be able to withstand much more damage now." Alina breathed a sigh of relief. The new shield was their last line of defense, and if it held, they had a chance to win this war. But she knew better than to rely on technology alone. The humans would need to fight with everything they had. The battle was set to unfold once again. The Targovans had regrouped, and they were ready to strike back with everything in their arsenal. They had learned from their past mistakes, and they would be relentless. The humans had proven themselves in the first strike, but now they would face the full fury of the Targovan fleet. As the human and allied fleets moved into position, Alina stood on the command deck, watching the stars outside. She had never felt more certain of humanity's strength. The Targovans may have been powerful, but humanity was determined. They had shown their enemies that they could fight back, and they would not stop until they had won their freedom. "We're ready," General Hale said, looking out at the fleet. Alina nodded. "Then let's show them what we're made of." With that, the fleets moved into position, preparing for the next battle. This time, it wouldn't be just about defense. It would be about taking the fight to the Targovans and ensuring that humanity's place in the galaxy was secure. The war was not over, but the humans had proven they would not go down without a fight. The Targovans may have underestimated them once, but they would never make that mistake again. The calm before the storm had passed. Both sides were prepared for the decisive battle that would determine the future of the galaxy. Humanity, along with its allies, had shown their strength in the past, but now the Targovans were coming with everything they had. It was time to finish what they had started. Alina Marquez stood at the center of the command deck, surrounded by her officers. The tension in the air was thick, but she remained focused. They had one chance to make this count. The Aegis shield had been improved, and the human fleet was stronger than ever. But the Targovans had the advantage of sheer numbers and advanced technology. This would be the most difficult battle yet. "We've trained for this moment," Alina said, her voice firm. "We've fought for this moment. The Targovans think they can crush us, but we will prove them wrong. Today, we fight for our future." General Hale nodded, his face serious. "We're ready, Alina. The fleet is in position, and we've got our best soldiers. Let's make sure the Targovans know who they're dealing with." In the moments before the battle began, Alina's mind flashed to all the people who had fought and died for this moment. She thought of the soldiers who had given their lives, the scientists who had worked tirelessly on the Aegis shield, and the allies who had joined them in this fight. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something much bigger, their right to exist, to thrive, and to be free. "Time to show them who we are," Alina whispered to herself. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, the Targovan fleet was ready to launch their counterattack. Varnak, the Targovan leader, was in the command center of his flagship, staring at the human fleet on the display. His anger had fueled his resolve. He could not allow the humans to win. They had humiliated his forces once, and he would not let it happen again. "They think they've won," Varnak muttered, his voice dark. "But this time, there will be no mercy." The Targovan fleet was massive, ships upon ships, each equipped with advanced weaponry that far surpassed anything the humans had ever seen. Yet, Varnak knew that sheer strength alone would not win this battle. The humans had proven that they could stand against the Targovans. They had proven that they could adapt and fight with determination. Varnak would have to outsmart them, using every advantage he had. "Attack!" Varnak ordered. The Targovans launched their assault, sending waves of ships into the heart of the human fleet. Their weapons lit up the sky, firing energy blasts that could obliterate anything in their path. But the humans were ready. The Aegis shield surrounded the fleet, glowing brightly as it absorbed the blasts, holding firm under the onslaught. "We're holding strong," one of the officers called out. Alina's grip on the arm of her chair tightened. The shield was holding, but only just. The Targovans had come in full force, and their weapons were overwhelming. Still, the humans fought back with everything they had. Fighters darted through the chaos, striking the Targovans' ships with precision. The Zorvans and Trilaxians fought alongside the humans, their ships weaving through the battlefield with deadly accuracy. "Focus fire on their command ship," Alina ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. "If we take down Varnak's flagship, the rest of their fleet will fall apart." The human fleet followed her orders without hesitation. Fighters locked onto the Targovan flagship, unleashing everything they had. The shields on the Targovan ship flickered, and the massive ship began to shake. Varnak gritted his teeth, realizing that this battle could be lost if he didn't act fast. "Prepare to retaliate with everything we have," Varnak growled. "We will not lose." But it was too late. The human fighters had found their mark. A well-placed shot from a Trilaxian ship pierced the Targovan flagship's core, sending a massive explosion through the ship. The Targovan fleet faltered as their leader's ship was destroyed, and the remaining Targovan ships began to scatter. The humans and their allies pressed forward, pushing the Targovans back. They had broken through the Targovans' defenses, and now victory was within reach. As the battle raged on, Alina watched as the Targovan fleet retreated. It was clear that the humans had won. The Aegis shield had held strong, the fleet had fought with courage, and the Targovans had been beaten. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's strength, and the Targovans would never forget what they had learned. The human fleet returned to Earth, victorious. Alina stood in front of her officers, a look of pride on her face. They had done it. They had not only defended their home, they had shown the galaxy that humanity would never back down. "We did it," Alina said, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "This is just the beginning. Humanity has proven itself, and we will keep fighting for the future we deserve." The war was over, but the lessons learned would last forever. The Targovans had underestimated humanity once, but now they would never forget the strength, resilience, and courage of the human race. The galaxy had a new power, a force to be reckoned with, and humanity's place in it was secure.